everybody, and welcome to another video. There's no One Piece this week, so that's why I'm doing this. I think it's pretty safe to say that we're headed in the story, we're headed for something pretty impactful, because during the week, during a live stream, actually, one of the editors for the series said that he started crying when he read the manuscript for either chapter 986 or chapter 987. So it's an upcoming chapter that made the editor cry. I'm guessing it has something to do with either a sad revelation or a death. It could even have something to do with why Kiku was crying by the end of the last chapter. So that's what we're headed towards, but today we're talking about the highly perpetually discussed topic of who will be the next Nakama, the next Straw Hat crew member. And, you know, I think it's a very popular topic, but at the same time, I think sometimes people exaggerate. Sometimes it's gotten to the point where each time there's a brand new character introduced, some members of the fandom point at them and they're like, blank for Nakama. It's the only fandom I know that has a very high risk of overdosing on Nakama. Hey, did you hear about what happened to John? I heard he wanted too many people to join the crew, so he exploded. So yeah, ever since I caught up with One Piece, people have been wanting new Nakama. People have been wanting new people to join the crew. And actually, people have been wanting a female to join. I remember, like, you know, if I go back to when I first caught up, I remember people wanted Marguerite, the girl from Amazon Lily. People wanted her to join the crew. Then when we got to Fishman Island, people wanted Shida Hoshi to join. Then in Punk Hazard, people wanted Monet to join. In Dressrosa, people wanted Rebecca. And then they even wanted Sabo at some point. Even though Sabo has said that, you know, he doesn't want to be under Luffy as a captain. He wants to do his own thing. But then he's technically under Dragon. So, you know, that's kind of what Ace said too when he ended up under Whitebeard. But anyway, now we're in Wano. And with the exception of Jinbei, all right, I feel like for the very first time, post-time skip, we actually have two candidates that bring enough evidence to the table so that you can argue that they have a high chance of joining the crew. And those, of course, are Carrot, and Yamato. So I'm going to give you the arguments for both of them, see where that leads us. But first, I think it's important to establish why Luffy would need another crew member to begin with.
In the very first episode of the anime, Luffy states that he's looking for a crew and that he thinks that 10 crewmates should be enough. That's 10 crewmates plus Luffy himself, for a total of 11 Straw Hats. Now with Jinbei joining, we currently have 9 members plus Luffy. And yes, I know that Vivi is kind of considered an honorary member of the crew, but since she decided to stay behind in Alabasta, and because she's kind of been built up to have this more political role in the future, as opposed to a pirate role, I'm not really taking her into consideration into Luffy's 10 crewmates. I'm not counting her. So we currently only have 9 plus Luffy. Now, if you take a look at Blackbeard's crew, we find that technically speaking, Teach also currently has 9 crewmates in addition to himself. I'm not counting Stronger in the lineup because he's more of a pet and mode of transportation than anything else. With that said, just like Luffy, Blackbeard is also 1 member short. Because if you remember back in Dressrosa, we found out that Burgess was one of the 10 Titanic captains. But as of right now, we only know the identity of 9 captains out of the 10. So if Luffy's crew is going to fight Blackbeard's crew for the One Piece, Luffy needs another crew member so that the matchups can be even by the end. And also Blackbeard needs to reveal the identity of his final and 10th Titanic captain.
Now that we've established the necessity for another crew member, I want to look at the different aspects, the characteristics that are kind of implied requirements for a character to eventually become a Straw Hat. The character has to have a position, a role in the crew. Like Sanji, right? He's the cook, Nami's the navigator, Robin's the archaeologist, Brook is the musician. Some kind of a role, right? That the character, or something to add to the crew in terms of like functionality. Another thing the character has to have is some kind of a gag. You know, something that adds to the comedic dynamic of the crew. Like Zoro getting lost, or Nami caring a lot about money, or Robin's dark humor, that kind of stuff. Although, technically speaking, I'm not really sure what Jinbei's gag is. The third thing is that the character has to have a backstory. Usually a sad one, you know, because it gets us to empathize with the character, and it gets us to root for the character joining the crew and achieving their goal, their dream, which actually is the 4th requirement. the character has to have a dream. And then finally, and this goes without saying, but the character has to be a good person. Like, Luffy won't let you join his crew if he doesn't think that you're a good person. So with that in mind, with those requirements listed out, let's look at Carrot first, starting with her role.
So for Carrot, she could technically be the lookout on the ship. The position I think is better suited for Usopp because of his observation haki, but since he's the sniper already, having a lookout could still be useful if he's busy like manning the cannons and doing his marksman thing. Plus, we've seen Carrot hang around the crow's nest a lot ever since she went aboard the Sunny. Kind of like in reference to Pedro, because Pedro really liked heights.
Carrot is also pretty agile, and she can also jump pretty high, so she can get up and down from the crow's nest very, very fast, very easily. Now, in terms of her gag or the comedy that she could bring to the table, at one point I do believe that Luffy took one of her carrots and she got really upset and she tackled him. And so Nami tells Luffy, just pet her head. And so Luffy does so, and like a little bunny, she gets really calm and subdued. Now, when it comes to Carrot's dream, we know that she was the only Mink in Zou who wanted to set sail with the desire to have an adventure, which is very similar to the way Pedro asked Roger to take him aboard his ship. However, Roger turned Pedro down, and he told him that he should wait, because everybody has their own time to shine, and that his time to help would come eventually. And so, of course, this translates to Pedro going off with Luffy and being the main reason why the Straw Hats were able to escape Whole Cake Island without getting wrecked by Big Mom. And so before his sacrifice, Pedro is able to inherit his will to Carrot by telling her that one day she will understand how important it was that the Straw Hats continue to set sail from Whole Cake Island. And Carrot has essentially remained in the company of the Straw Hats ever since then. So it kind of gets you to think, why is Oda having her hang around the Straw Hats even after Whole Cake Island? What is the motivation behind Carrot being with the main group of characters for this long? And it kind of takes me back to the chapter where the Straw Hats reunite with Jinbei, and we see Carrot in that panel that is exclusively reserved for Straw Hat crew members. It's on the first page of chapter 977. And so it kind of gets you to think, why hasn't Oda made Carrot rejoin the Minks already? Why is she spending so much time with the Straw Hats?
It also takes me back to the fact that we know that Roger and his crew were too early when they found the One Piece. They were too early to achieve the goal intended by Joy Boy. So essentially, Luffy has to be the one to do what Roger didn't have enough time to do. Now, since Pedro is already gone, and he didn't get to set sail with Roger, it kind of makes poetic sense for Luffy to have a representative of Pedro's will aboard his ship when he actually finds the One Piece. Also, Carrot being on the crew would also kind of go along with Inuarashi and Nekomamushi being on Roger's ship as well. You know, both of the Minks, they sailed with Roger, but unfortunately they weren't able to be with Roger in Laugh Tale at the end of the line because they stayed in Wano. So Carrot being there with Luffy when he gets to Laugh Tale could kind of work to offer some type of fulfillment for the Minks, since two Minks have gotten very close to going to Laugh Tale, but they still haven't been there. Like I said before, another thing that the Straw Hats have had before joining the crew is a backstory. And I think this is where Carrot's weakest aspect is. You know, the fact that her backstory isn't really fleshed out. In fact, what little backstory we have of her is more about Pedro than it is about her. It's about Pedro's influence over her. We know that she wasn't really good at using swords, at sword fighting, so Pedro decided to take her under his wing so that she could find a fighting style that was better suited for her abilities. And so she's very inspired by Pedro. She's like, wow, I never thought that I could be strong. You know, I never thought that I could find a skill that was suited for me. And then Pedro just kind of tells her the same thing that Roger told him when he was a cub, which is essentially just to wait your turn, be patient, your time will come.
And so even though I think that's a good beginning, I don't think it's enough for Carrot to just have that as her backstory and that's it. I think that if Oda really wants her to be a Straw Hat, I think Oda has to flesh out her backstory a little bit more, give us more depth. And I think he could do this, if Carrot actually confronts and fights Pero. If that actually goes down, if that fight actually happens, that's an opportunity for Oda to expand her backstory. Another weakness that I see for the possibility of Carrot joining the crew is that her interactions with Luffy, with the captain, have been pretty limited. And the interactions that we have seen haven't been pretty strong. Like, yeah, there are some jokes and some moments of camaraderie, but when it comes to it, at the end of the day, Luffy tends to have like a serious one-on-one with, potential crew members, right? Because Luffy addresses the trauma of that character and he kind of works as a healing agent for them. So I feel like that's been a little bit limited with Carrot. We haven't seen much. That being said, though, Oda can change that in this arc by expanding more on Carrot's character. Now, one of the things that Carrot does have in her favor is that Luffy actually calls her by her actual name. For the most part, Luffy doesn't bother remembering everybody's name, unless he thinks you're really important, right? So, for example, he calls all of his Nakama by their actual name. Okay, he also calls Ace and Sabo by their actual name. He also calls the Yonko by their name, because in his mind, those are important opponents that he has to overcome. And he's kind of friends with Shanks. Luffy also called Katakuri by his actual name during that fight. And I think it's because Katakuri gained Luffy's respect, during that battle. So again, if you're important to Luffy, if you do something that kind of gains his respect for you, he'll use your actual name. It's not something to take lightly when Luffy uses your actual name. I think there's actually just two main reasons for why Carrot would not join the Straw Hats. The first one is if Pedro comes back. If Pedro turns out to be alive, that would automatically negate well over 90% of Carrot's character. So it's kind of what? So that's why if Pedro comes back, I would consider that horrible writing. So, Pedro, he should stay dead. And then the second thing that would stop Carrot from joining would be herself. If, let's say, she pulls a Vivi and decides to say, you know what, I had a great adventure, I had a great time with you guys, but I have a role to play with the Minks, or, I have to stay in this specific location and I'll help you out when we meet again. If she does that, then it's okay, I can see that interfering with her joining the crew, but that has to come from her.
Now I'm just going to show you Luffy's first reaction to Robin sneaking aboard the Going Merry, right? His first reaction to Robin sneaking aboard the ship, and look at what he says. And then look at Luffy's reaction and dialogue when he finds out that Carrot has snuck aboard the Sunny. It's essentially the same thing.
And now for Yamato. So I'm going to start talking about Yamato's possible position, possible role in the crew, which actually goes hand in hand with her dream. Because if you remember, Yamato said that she found Oden's logbook. So of course, ships have logbooks in them, right, to record the events of the day. So they have to be updated pretty regularly. So Yamato could be the logbook keeper. Essentially what Oden did when he was with Whitebeard and then with Roger. Just take notes, keep records of everything that happened. And I think that goes along with her inheriting Oden's will, right? If you remember, Oden, he wanted to open up Wano, right, to the rest of the world. I think that goal will be accomplished this arc. But then if you remember, Oden also wanted to get outside of Wano to see the world, which is something that Yamato hasn't done because she's been trapped. So Yamato wants to get out to see the world. She says that she wanted to go with Ace, but she didn't get to. So now it's kind of like Luffy is the perfect opportunity to take her aboard. And so that way, a part of Oden's will be fulfilled through Yamato, much like a part of Pedro's will be fulfilled through Carrot. And so if Yamato becomes the official logbook keeper for the Straw Hats, I think it's just a cool little thing that, technically speaking, all of the females that are Straw Hats, their job has something to do with reading and interpretation. How Robin reads history and she can interpret poneglyphs, and then Nami, she reads maps and she can, read the climate, right, the weather, and she can also write maps. And then Yamato would be the one in charge of record keeping important events, right, in written form.
One of the plot points of Wano that we still know pretty much nothing about is Kaido's backstory, right? We know that he was a member of Rocks, but we don't really know why he wants to destroy everything and why he wants to die. We also don't know who Yamato's mother is. And so I think it's very likely that we will be getting a Kaido flashback from Yamato's perspective that explains their relationship as well as the history of their Oni race further. And so it could turn out to be that, much like Big Mom, maybe Kaido started off with good intentions and had a dream that was kind of good at heart, but that somewhere along the line, like, his dream became corrupted and he began doing things the wrong way. And it's going to be up to Yamato to reach the end of the line to gain some kind of closure and redemption for the Oni race, as well as for her father's long-lost dream. So if Yamato does join, not only will Luffy have someone who represents Odin right there with him, much like Roger had Odin when they reached Laugh Tale, but Yamato could also be the one to fight Avalo Pizarro, who appears to be the same race as Yamato and as Kaido. So maybe if Yamato fights him, we'll get to find out more about the history of the Oni race. And then, of course, Yamato's gag is pretty obvious. She's obsessed with Odin. She's kind of a fangirl.
Honestly, I think the main limitation that Yamato has right now is that she's new, right? That she's a new character and that the character is being introduced after 900 plus chapters of this manga. But I mean, I think that's easily addressed with Oda, expanding more on Yamato as a character. And then by then we'll know for sure. And I think, right now it's exciting because Yamato is new. So it's like, oh yeah, Yamato for Nakama.
And so just like when you meet somebody for the first time, I think it's important to let the dust settle a little bit and spend more time with Yamato. And in terms of her being a good person, I mean, there's still the slight chance that she might be secretly working for Kaido. But then again, Luffy did say that he didn't feel any harmful intent from Yamato. So I'm pretty sure that she's a quality person, just like Carrot. But we just need more time with her. I also think that if Yamato joins, it'll be kind of cool because everything comes full circle. If you remember when Luffy tried recruiting Zoro for the first time, Zoro completely turned him down. He was like, no, I'm not joining you. I live my life my way. And Luffy's like, well, yeah, but I already decided that you're going to be part of my crew, so.
So progress-wise, I think it'll be kind of neat to show that in the beginning, Luffy's first crewmate turned him down completely. He's like, no, I'm not going with you. And then by the end, Luffy's final crew member actually invited themselves to join Luffy's crew. Like Yamato saying, you have to take me with you.
Also, since Yamato knew Ace, if she found out that it was Akainu who was responsible for Ace's fate, this could work in giving Yamato some vested interest, some motivation to fight against the Marines by the end of the series. Now, at the end of the day, we know that both the Minks and the Kozuki clan have had a history of being friends with each other, of being allies for generations. Also, both groups seem to have some kind of secret connection with the moon. Like, the Kozuki family sympathizers have a crescent moon tattooed on their ankles. The word Kozuki in Japanese contains the kanji for moon, and then the Minks gain a new form from the full moon, and even the word Sulong means moon lion. Plus, for some unknown reason, they can also produce electricity from their bodies. They call it electro, and coincidentally, electricity was exactly what was needed in order for Eneru, who arrived at the moon, to revive the secret army of ancient automata. You know those little cute little robot things that were hidden in the moon. If you don't know what I'm talking about, just read the cover stories for chapter 428 to 474. It's all there. It's basically Eneru finding a secret army hidden inside of Pluton. I mean, the moon. It's definitely the moon, right? Totally not an ancient weapon that he just discovered there.
But the point of the matter here is that because the Kozuki clan and the Minks are so tightly connected, so tightly intertwined by years of history, personally, I would not mind if Luffy steps onto Laugh Tale with a representative of the Kozuki clan in Yamato and a representative of the Minks with Carrot. Honestly, I think the main thing that needs work with both of them is their backstory. I mean, Carrot already has a little bit of backstory, which, by the way, I think Carrot technically has more backstory than any of the members of the Straw Hat Grand Fleet. And then Yamato, which I think is obvious that we're going to get more backstory out of her because it's going to be connected with Kaido's backstory. But I really wouldn't mind if both of them, jumped aboard the ship by the end of the arc. And we have 2 panels celebrating that, these 2 new characters are part of the crew. Kind of like when Usopp and Robin rejoined the crew, how like the Straw Hats were celebrating that. And if that happens, we'll definitely see a Yamato and Carrot bounty poster by the end of the arc. I'm kind of curious why Oda decided not to give Carrot a bounty after Whole Cake Island. You know, because she was one of the reasons why the Straw Hats were able to escape as well. So, you know, I think that was a missed opportunity, but maybe he was saving it for Wano. And then if Yamato joins, I'm curious if the news is going to spin Yamato joining in a different way. Like maybe the news will read something like, Monkey D. Luffy kidnaps the only child of Yonko Kaido. And so if people think that Luffy kidnapped Yamato, that'll make Luffy's bounty go up even higher. But yeah, that's pretty much it for me, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know your thoughts about the points that I raised in this video down below. If you would like to, give this video a thumbs up. Helps out the channel. Thanks a bunch. Catch you guys later. Take care. Bye.